Okay, nightcappers, picture this. Just rock with me real quick. Ukraine's president flies all the way to Washington with European leaders seeking U.S. support. And right before the meeting, Donald Trump picks up the phone and calls Daddy Vladimir Putin. That's not diplomacy. That's double dealing. What does it mean when the U.S. president consults the invader before the ally? Stick with me, because at the end, I'll break down the one red flag you won't hear on cable news.
This is NightCap with Dr. Nola Haynes, streaming only on the Persist Network.
Hey, y'all. I'm your host, Dr. Nola Haynes, your favorite political scientist. Tonight, we are keeping it all the way real, keeping it global, and keeping it cute. But don't get it twisted, because the stakes are serious and very, very high. So grab your glass, silence that group chat, and let's get into your late night convo of the truth. This is NightCap. And if you're catching us on YouTube, hit subscribe and ring that bell. All right, y'all. So much has happened in the world of foreign policy since last Tuesday, since last time we were here all together on NightCap. This week on the People's Brief, it's all about Russia, Ukraine, Trump, Zelensky, the entire A block. So let's get into this. Let's dig into this a little deeper. So the headline: Trump held a surprise phone call with Putin right before his high-profile meeting with Zelensky. What does that mean? Trump called Putin before the 1:15 meeting, and then Putin, being Putin, calls back during the meetings with Zelensky and the rest of the European leaders. So this is already like dramatic. Okay, the stakes. What are we talking about here? Zelensky came to Washington to ask for more weapons and guarantees of U.S. support. But instead of clarity, he walked into a room where Trump was, had already made up his mind about how this was going to go. Putin showed up. My bad, y'all. Zelensky showed up in good faith, flanked by European leaders, leader of NATO, you name it, wanting to have a good faith meeting, hoping to leave with concrete outcomes. One of those outcomes being security assurances. I think we have a clip of Zelensky talking to President Trump about those security clearances, and I'll come back and explain those on the other side.
We will discuss on the level of leaders during trilateral meeting, and President Trump will try to organize such meeting, and he said that he will come or not come. Ukraine will be happy if you
both want me there, I will be there.
Yeah, thank you. And I think this is very important. Yes, so security guarantees, bringing kids back, and all our people, not only warriors, first of all warriors, and all the civilians, journalists, a lot of people in prison. So we need them back. And guarantees which will work for the years. We spoke about it, and I showed the president a lot of details on the battlefield, on the map. Thank you so much. Thank you for the map, by the way.
Good map.
It was great. I'm thinking how to take it back.
We'll get to it.
No. I think that we had constructive, specific meeting, and very thankful to all the leaders who are here, and you help a lot. And so we are happy of that. We have such big unity today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Okay, why is this important? I'm going to point out a few things. So first of all, y'all, apologies that was from the position of being focused on Trump and not Zelensky. It was Zelensky who was speaking. So this is why this is important. He mentioned security guarantees. Now, what does he mean by that? Here's the problem. Vladimir Putin is known for not keeping his promises. He's known for walking away from agreements, and he's invaded Ukraine twice. So what Zelensky is saying, if I come to the table, we lay out a peace deal, what security guarantees do I have that Putin won't do it again? He won't try again. So there's been a lot of conversation about security assurances in the style of Article 5, referring to NATO, a concept around collective defense. Now, here's where my brain goes with all of this. Trump told Zelensky the night before he got to Washington two things. You can never be a part of NATO, and you got to give Putin Crimea. Okay, so collective defense is essentially what NATO is for. So Zelensky is asking for collective defense with probably making the concession to never join NATO. How does that work what would that look like? Because again, that is essentially the purpose of NATO. So that's something that's still a gray area, but I get it. I understand why he wants security assurances. The second thing that we need to pay attention to, not only did he show up in a suit as Trump demanded, but he was being cordial and statesmanlike because he understood that he had to assuage Trump. He had to placate his ego. All the thank yous and the deference and liking the maps and saying, oh, you know, President Trump, you were helpful here. All of that is part of it. All of that is part of the hard job of diplomacy, something that this administration doesn't quite understand. That last meeting that Zelensky had in the Oval with Trump and JD Vance berated him as if he invaded Russia, as if it was the other way around. That is not diplomacy. All right, so the optics to the rest of the world. To American allies, it looks like Trump is double dealing. It looks like Trump is playing both sides because we saw what happened in Alaska. He had our military troops literally roll out the red carpet. Did y'all see a red carpet for Zelensky, an actual hero, and our actual allies, our actual European allies? Did you? I didn't. He's also undermining Ukraine's sovereignty and security by cozying up to Putin. Now, some may argue that that's strategic, that maybe you want to have one of our longstanding best friend, not best friend, frenemies, you know, kind of like chaotic relationship, that you want to bring that person closer to you. There's an argument to be made about that. Axios reported that even senior Republicans were blindsided and worried that what they saw in Alaska weakened U.S. credibility abroad. I would say we're already there. We're already at the point of our credibility and trustworthiness being weakened, right? I will say that what we saw yesterday was probably the most cordial that we've seen with Trump, but that doesn't matter. What matters is the outcome. What matters is the deliverable. Okay. All right. So for Ukraine, everyone needs to understand this is beyond politics. It's about survival. It's about bringing children, women, captured soldiers home. For Americans, it's about whether our foreign policy is driven by strategy or spectacle. I broke some of this down on Don Lemon's show last night. Everybody, I'm so excited. It was my debut on Don Lemon last night. Thank you so much, Don, for having me on. My really good friend, Reese Colbert of the Reese Colbert Show on Sirius XM. She was the one who made that happen. So thank you, sis. You are such a real one. And so last night, not only was it my debut on Don, he did the sweetest thing, y'all. I think we have a clip of it here.
Haynes is a political scientist, media analyst, foreign policy expert, and host of NightCap on the Persist Network. Dr. Nola Haynes, welcome to the program. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I know we're talking about horrible stuff, but I'm just excited.
Thank you very much. I have been wanting to get you on. She shared with me beforehand that her mom, was a huge Don Lemon fan. And so she said my mom would be so excited to see what happened. And her mom, though, heavenly hello to your mother in 2023. And thank you. And I'm so glad that your mom is a big supporter. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So you watching this mess going on? I feel
that
this meeting that happened today should have been the first meeting.
That was a really special moment, because my mom really was a huge Don Lemon fan, and to be on his show. And what I say is I love Free Don. To be on Free Don's show was incredible. And thank you so much, Don Lemon, for having me. And I hope that our relationship grows and you have me back on the show. People seem to have liked me. Y'all. All right. So we're going to take a quick break and we will be back with a very important guest, with Dr. Anna Kumar, who is the president and CEO of Ipas. We're going to dig in deep with what's happening around the world, specifically with women and global sexual and reproductive health and rights. But right now, a quick ad break. NightCap is powered by Persist. Want more smart, unbothered commentary where politics meets culture? Subscribe to Persist, Substack, and YouTube, and never miss the tea. All right, folks, welcome back. As I told you a little earlier in the show, I'm really excited about tonight's guest. On the show, we say this is where politics meets culture. We like to, unwind a little bit. We like to have a little fun. We have all types of folks on the show, from comedians to influencers to hardcore politicos to politicians. We have everyone on the show. The conversation is a little bit different. We are bringing awareness to a situation that is very near and dear to my heart. And I'm excited about tonight's guest because we get to dig into this issue. We get to raise awareness about this issue, and you all get to meet an exciting and dynamic woman. And her name is Dr. Anu Kumar. She is the president and CEO of Ipas, the leading international organization working to advance global sexual and reproductive health and rights. With decades of experience in global health, she's been on the forefront of ensuring women and girls, especially in the most vulnerable countries, have access to care, resources, and dignity they deserve. Right now, she and her team are seeing firsthand the devastating impacts of USAID cuts, from reproductive health programs to entire health systems teetering on collapse. Without further ado, Dr. Anu Kumar, and I understand you prefer to be called Anu, right?
Yes, Anu is fine. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. This is, I guess perhaps to say I'm excited might be the wrong adjective, but I am happy that we are having this conversation tonight.
Yeah, me too. It's really an important one.
It is. Anu, where are you? Oh, excuse me. Where are you located?
I live in the United States.
Okay. So you're stateside. All right. Because this conversation dovetails. It dovetails, right, with domestic policies and also international policies.
It very much does. Yeah. And I think, you're right. It's like a bridge. And in some ways, I'm personally am a bridge. I was born in India and raised in the United States, and have gone back and forth both to India, but then also lived in many other places in the world. And so, yeah, I kind of see the U.S. impact in the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm. And so you kind of teed it up very nicely, because I was going to ask you about your background and how did you get here? So you mentioned India. So tell us a little bit about who you are and how you became president and CEO of Ipas.
Yeah. So I'm a sort of classic first generation immigrant. I come from a very kind of middle class family, but a highly educated family. And I really pursued higher education significantly. It was, I grew up being told and do still believe that higher education is a ticket to success, to good things. And so I pursued it, and I was really fortunate. I went to the University of California at Berkeley as an undergraduate, which changed my life.
Go Bruins. Go Bruins.
Seriously? Exactly. Cal was like, and UCLA too. These are world-class universities where you meet and see people from everywhere, and you learn about things that you never even knew existed. It was life-changing. And not just the classes, which were also incredible, and the professors that I met, but just the life at Berkeley, the sheer diversity of the people there, the ways of thinking and being. It was really eye-opening to me. And then I actually wanted to pursue anthropology. So that's what I am. I'm a medical anthropologist.
Okay.
Yeah. And I also have a background in public health. And in the course of doing that work, I went back to India, and I lived in a village in Rajasthan. And I remember talking to the women, and my project was around how do women make decisions about fertility and their own reproductive lives? And does education make a difference in how they make those decisions and their power dynamics with their husbands and their families and communities? And I remember, I was like in my mid-20s at that point, and I'm talking to people, and all of the women who are in their 20s are married.
Yeah.
And they are married into the community, and they have several children. And I just thought about how different my life has been, because I had access to amazing education, because I had access to contraception, and because I had access to all kinds of resources that I was very fortunate to enjoy in the United States. And so that kind of, I don't know, I guess that thinking about how do we unlock the potential of everyone on the planet, that's been my motivation for quite some time. I think about how much human potential and talent we leave undeveloped and unharnessed because of poverty, because of lack of access to education and healthcare. Anyway, I just feel really passionately that we need all the help we can get to solve some of the intractable problems that we're facing. And yet we squander those resources.
Yes. So there are some interesting intersections there. As you were speaking, I just remember some of my most amazing classes as an undergrad was in anthropology. And I actually fell in love with gorillas because of anthropology. Like I still love gorillas. You're an anthropologist, so you will totally get that.
Have you gone to see the mountain gorillas? Have you been to see the mountain gorillas in Rwanda or Uganda?
No, not yet, but it is truly a bucket list item. It's something that I am going to do. I am obsessed with gorillas.
It is amazing. It is amazing.
Oh my goodness, I bet. So we can totally nerd out on anthropology, but I do want to pivot back to something very interesting you said about squandering opportunities. And I cannot help but to think about so many of my colleagues in the foreign policy space, in the practitioner space, lost their jobs and careers with the collapse of USAID. Now, there are some in the community that will whisper that they're not that upset that USAID is, maybe they're not happy that it's completely demolished, but, happy that definitely something was done. I guess that's the best way to put it. And then there are others who are completely devastated because they understand how important the work is. And there are just some who just don't appreciate foreign aid assistance and work. And so I just want to talk a little bit about the real world consequences in your work with Ipas, how you've seen the way the collapse of USAID has impacted real people, not in a political sense, right? But how it's impacted real lives.
Yeah, no matter what you think about foreign aid, the United States government did provide incredible amount of resources for family planning, for maternal health care, for HIV, for tuberculosis, for malaria, food assistance, humanitarian assistance, and it meant a great deal to the people that it was helping. And I think as painful as the departure and the collapse of U.S. foreign assistance has been, is how quickly it happened. It has been a devastating speed in which these funds have been withdrawn. And when that happens, you think about your own household. If somebody loses their income, loses a revenue stream, how you have to adjust and pivot to figure out how you're going to survive. And that's what these countries are faced with. They're facing the situation where this very significant donor and revenue stream has been cut off, and they got to move. They got to figure out how they're going to address the needs of their citizens. And it's not easy. And we're learning in this process that, and the citizens of these countries are learning that, in fact, their governments depended on outside assistance for some really basic and core services. Now, I imagine that's going to trigger domestic conversations about, the best use of donor assistance. But what I do know from our work at Ipas, and I should point out that Ipas does not actually receive U.S. government assistance. We've never received U.S. government assistance. So for us, the departure of U.S. foreign assistance is not an impact or a hit to our revenue.
Okay.
But it is an impact and hit to our programmatic efforts.
Interesting. Okay. Say a little bit more about that.
The United States government was a huge funder of contraception,
right,
and contraceptive supplies. And so we don't have direct funding, but the impact of not having contraceptive commodities, for example, is significant. It's huge. So, Ipas's work is really around making sure that people have access to contraception, and then also access to safe abortion care. So contraception is pretty critical in making sure that people don't have unintended or unwanted pregnancies. And without it, what we're seeing is an increase in unintended pregnancies, an increase in people seeking abortion care. And we're really concerned that the health systems are not going to be able to meet the needs of their citizens, of their population. What we've seen across many of our countries, so I'm talking about places like Ethiopia, Malawi, Kenya, the Democratic Republic of Congo, we're seeing thousands and thousands of vacancies for health system employees. So in Ethiopia alone, contracts for more than 5,000 health system employees were terminated. They couldn't pay them any longer. Kenya has seen a funding freeze that resulted in 54,000 job losses in the health sector. So the scale is really enormous.
I'm flabbergasted at those numbers, especially when you hear comments from, cabinet members in this administration that say that there hasn't been any direct impact from from stopping foreign aid. There's no way that that is a true statement. There's just no way that that's a true statement. And you just gave us 2 examples of why that isn't a true statement, because it's a snowball effect, right? Those people are no longer in the healthcare system, means people are not being treated, right? That is going to trigger fatalities.
That's right. They're going to experience delays in care. Some of them won't even go to care. I mean, I think people maybe don't fully grasp just how challenging it is for people living in rural Ethiopia, for example, to actually get to a health center. It can take an entire day.
It's challenging for rural Americans to sometimes get health care. Can you imagine? I lived in West Africa. I understand, the beauty and the growth, but I also understand the limitations. So if you can't get health care in rural America, I'm guaranteeing you cannot get health care in rural Africa.
Mm-hmm. And it's the same challenges. It's the same challenges that you're right, that Americans face here. The distances are great. You have to take time off work. You have to pay for transportation. You have to, and childcare. There's all kinds of, and then let's say you show up, you somehow manage to get there. There are no supplies. There are no doctors. The health clinic is only operating in limited hours. If it's operating, you have to do it all over again, and are you that motivated to actually come back again to try to see about your healthcare needs? It's just asking a lot. It's just asking a lot for people. And particularly for, I would say, stigmatized issues, like, for example, gender-based violence. We do a lot of work on gender-based violence, places like the Democratic Republic of Congo. And we know that they have these things called one-stop shops, essentially, or facilities where you can go in and get all the care that you need. But we know now that these have been reduced in number, and people are not able to get the care that they need. So somebody who's coming in because they've experienced violence, and let's say they're pregnant as a result of rape, might have to come back again. And they may not be emotionally up to that, leave aside physically.
Right. It's layered. And that's why the enormity of the problem from dismantling aid is a lot larger than people think, because it does snowball. And quickly, like you said, the way in which USAID was dismantled, that impact was felt almost immediately. And over time, I got to tell you, Anu, I'm scared, to even contemplate over time. Like I shared with you, before this show got started, I'm the chief strategist for Women of Color Advancing Peace and Security. And what we do is we focus on women and girls, living in conflict zones or war zones, and anything that has to do with the health and safety and security of women and young girls. I understand from a very unique perspective how large this problem is. And as we come up on the anniversary of Women, Peace and Security, even with the state of that, where are we with women, peace and security? That was almost dismantled overnight. But I do have a very specific question, and you kind of answered it a little bit. I know with WCAPS, we are having a very hard time with our traditional funders and finding new funders, maybe because we have women of color in our name, in our title. I know that you said you don't get funding from the government, but are you facing similar challenges? Because I know a lot of organizations within the foreign policy, national security space, all facing a depletion of funding. Facing that, and so how are you handling it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a good time for international development and global health work in general. So, of course, the departure of the U.S. government has been extremely significant, but it is coupled with cuts that total almost $30 billion in foreign assistance from other countries around the world, primarily European countries. So we're talking Germany, which is the second largest donor in international development, the Netherlands. And a lot of it, I have to say, is because of larger geopolitical issues. Some of it has to do with local politics. I mean, some of it definitely has to do with very similar kind of politics that we're facing in the United States. Rise of anti-immigration sentiment, rise in nationalist sentiment, and essentially right-wing extremism. throughout Europe. And some of it also has to do with the very real constraints on countries as the wars in Gaza and in Ukraine continue. These are putting a real strain on the resources of Europe. And Europe is extremely worried, and, I would say rightly so, that Putin has invaded Ukraine. And this is, and so, to shore up their defense. And so, the money is coming from somewhere. Unfortunately, the money is coming largely from foreign assistance. And Nola, this is one of the reasons that I'm sure you've heard the story about the U.S. government destroying the contraceptive supplies that already exist. This is one of the reasons that particular act is so outrageous and egregious. It's because of the waste. A couple of things there. First of all, let me just say what's happening. There's about $10 million worth of contraceptive commodities that have already been purchased that the U.S. government is now proposing to destroy. The commodities are sitting in Europe, and it would actually cost more to destroy them than it would to, distribute them.
What's the justification? I don't understand. What is the justification?
So this is an excellent question, and I've been trying to figure it out myself. The State Department has issued statements saying that it doesn't support abortion-related policies. So, and they keep calling upon, existing policies. They can cast an amendment, and the gag rule is what they cite as the reason that they're destroying these commodities. But I just want to point out something to your followers. The Helms Amendment has been in place for over 50 years. The Helms Amendment is a ban on the use of U.S. government funds for the provision of abortion care, and it is still in place and has been in place for all of these 50 years. Okay. So this policy justification makes no sense because what we're talking about is contraception, but they keep referring to them as abortifacients. And I think this is not an accident, and we need to hear this. They are talking about long-acting methods like IUDs and implants, and they're calling them abortifacients, and they're citing abortion policies as the reason for their destruction. So they're conflating contraception and abortion because that's what they're after. They're after, ultimately, they're after not just a ban on abortion, which they definitely want, a national ban on abortion, but also contraception. And so this is the justification that they're citing for this. And what's fascinating also about this is that organizations have offered to take the contraception, to take the commodities. UNFPA and private groups have said, no, we'll take them and we'll distribute it. Nope, they will not give them out. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you. This sounds beyond irresponsible. I'm just going to use the word, it sounds evil.
I think it's deliberate. And I think despite being given options out of it, they won't take them. So, we already are seeing millions of people that are deprived. They're, deprived of contraception right now. I mean, the latest statistics that I've seen are around 4 to 5 million people are not able to access their contraceptive methods. So, what is the motivation? I think the motivation is power. I think one of them is really around exerting American power over
in a very bullish way.
Exactly.
It's not diplomacy first. They've made it very clear that they're not interested in that. It's bullying. It's leaning into, in many ways, I'm going to use this word again. In many ways, it's leaning into the evil. They've baked that into the pie as if they don't care, right?
Because they don't. They don't care. They really, honest to goodness, do not care. Less than that, they even worse, I would say, is that, they're true believers here. They truly believe that these products are harmful despite all of the evidence, right? I mean, let's take a minute. Contraception is not new. These are not new products. These are commodities and products that we have used for decades and decades. And the data and research is so clear on how safe they are and what a great investment they are. In fact, in terms of public health goods, there are a few things that are sort of untarnished or, unvarnished goods in the public health field: clean water, immunizations, contraception. These are things that we know are a good investment. And we've done research over and over again, including cost data, to show that, $1 spent on family planning and contraception yields untold dividends. So they're putting all of that aside in order to advance their ideological.
And that's the thing. It's almost like so much of this sounds so ridiculous to our scientific brains. It almost sounds like something you would hear regurgitated during the Salem witch trials, or thinking if you were born left-handed, you're a spawn of the devil. Like that's just how wild these ideological assertions sound in 2025 in the 21st century. It is mind-blowing. And then they will say things like that we're destroying the entire higher education system because of left-leaning ideology, while replacing it, well, Sesame Street specifically, with something like Prager University that's not even a real accredited university that wants to dilute narratives around slavery. Like, it's just, we are living in a very unreal timeline that is boggling to people that apply logic, that live in a science-first world, a diplomacy-first world. We are going backwards in a very dangerous way and very quickly. And I am worried, and this is where I want to kind of get to it with the last thing, is how do we call out power? What do we do? How can we speak up and speak out in this moment about these cuts, about these issues? What will help? How can we get some sort of resolution to get us back on track and moving towards the 22nd century and out of the 18th and 19th century?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a quick or easy answer. So first of all, I don't think that I don't disagree with you in your idea that we're moving backwards, but I actually, the more I've been thinking about it, the more I think they are actively remaking our world. And so, as you're citing the changes in educational curricula, the changes in who and how data is collected and analyzed and used, the very foundations of knowledge are being shaken and replaced. And so what we're seeing right now is actually a complete remaking of our world and our reality. So how do we counter it? To be honest, I've been, and Ipas, we've been trying to create community as much as possible, because there's a sense of, am I going crazy? Is it me, or is this, or is this just totally insane? Because you read this stuff in the news and you're like, what? Is this actually happening? So there's a sense of kind of like, I need to be around people, and I need to and so we've launched a campaign called Resist and Persist. And I encourage your followers to look it up. We're doing things like book clubs. We're doing community outreach. We're inspired by change makers. We're getting artists involved, musicians involved, and we're just trying to really come together to think about how we can resist and how we can persist in this time. And so, we persist. Exactly. And I think, one of the things that we're doing in these book clubs is we're trying to understand how other resistance movements survived. So we're learning from Indigenous people. We're learning from, of course, the women's movement. We're learning from the civil rights movement. We're learning, from all over the world, because we're not the first people to face this kind of totalitarianism.
No, we are not. And we actually have more tools available.
Yes, we do. So anyway, I encourage people to come to our website, www.ipas.org, and look for the Resist and Persist campaign. Join it. Start your own book club. Found other creative outlets to create community, because I think that's really what's going to be required. Most of us don't have the wherewithal to marshal, military forces, or to, we don't have that kind of power.
The bandwidth is full.
Exactly.
I enjoyed this conversation for so many reasons. And as I'm listening to you speak, I would like to stay in contact with you. Maybe there's some partnering that we could do with WCAPS and the work that you all are doing, and also with Persist, the Persist Network, to resist and we persist. We persist is our hashtag. And
exactly.
Because we wanted to figure out ways not only to get folks elected in 26 and 28, but how do we counter this very loud media media ecosystem that's also the vehicle for a lot of these messages, right? So this is how we are resisting and persisting, is making sure that our voices are heard, making sure that we are hearing from people like you, making sure that we are talking about issues that matter and that will resonate with the people that don't have a political message because a politician needs to get elected in 2 weeks. So we want to talk to people around issues that matter. We talk to politicians too, don't get me wrong, but this is about breaking through. This is about resonating with people. And this is about countering very dangerous and coercive narratives that just, in my personal, and this is just my personal opinion, they have no place in a multicultural, diverse world, not just the United States world. And thank you so much for the work that you do. And thank you for joining us on NightCap. And I would love to have you back to get an update on resist and persist. But you've given us so much information and so much education. And I really appreciate you being here. And I definitely want to follow up on having a conversation about gorillas. I'm not kidding.
I'd be happy to, Nola. Thank you so much for having me and for doing this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anu. It was a pleasure.
My pleasure. Take care.
All right, folks. I genuinely enjoyed that conversation. Again, on NightCap, NightCappers, we talk to all different types of people, women. We're actually going to bring some guys in, especially for a special that we're working on. So you're going to see some men here shortly. But the Persist Network, we are women powered. And you just heard that very powerful conversation I just had with Anu about the threats and dangers of not just scaling back, but dismantling U.S. foreign aid. I know that some of these things are very abstract. Today in my Substack security brief, I wrote about how foreign policy is no longer this abstract thing, that we're moving into different territory because people are starting to see and understand how it impacts our daily lives and also intersects with national security. And so what we just talked about, yes, we're talking about foreign aid, but we're also talking about security, right? Security in the sense of the U.S. is causing major instability around the world. And let me tell y'all something called the boomerang effect. You cannot project policy out into the world and don't expect that boomerang to swing back around and to have a direct domestic effect. All right, y'all. So that was our conversation for the night. I really enjoyed it. From Trump cozying up to Putin, at the Alaska summit, meeting Zelensky and European leaders, to the heartbreaking reality that 9.7 million in life-saving contraceptives could go up in flames. One thing is very clear. Politics isn't just headlines. It's people's lives. Big thank you to Dr. Anu Kumar from Ipas for breaking down how these policies hit women and families on the ground. And remember, power never gives itself away. We got to keep watching, keep questioning, and keep showing up for each other. And if you find value in what we do here at NightCap, leave us a comment, like on the Persist Substack and YouTube, wherever you listen. Engage with us, subscribe, be part of our network and our community. And on that note, I'm Dr. Nola Haynes, your faith political scientist.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to Persist on Substack, YouTube, and Instagram.